What about things like living fossils?
Well, living fossils. You're not talking about me now, are you?
No.
Okay.
No, there's this term. So, for instance, I was in an aquarium in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and they had this giant display. It said living fossils, and they had this pool with horseshoe crabs floating around in there. Live horseshoe crabs floating around in this little pool, and then they had this display with fossils, things turned to rock, called horseshoe crabs.
Yes.
They looked identical.
Yes. What a living fossil is, we have creatures living today, and then we find their fossils that are supposed to be millions of years old, and the living creature looks identical to their fossil.
Oh.
That's what we mean by living fossil. Let's take a look at a couple of ones.
Okay.
They don't like to put these in textbooks too much. But when we look at turtles, we have a picture of a fossil turtle and a picture of a living turtle. They don't look any different, do they?
No.
They look exactly the same. Then we have fossil frogs. Guess what fossil frogs look like? Frogs.
Living
it's
frogs.
not hard to identify them. It's not
Okay.
hard to look different. Then we have what are called coelacanth fish. They're supposed to have been extinct for 70 million years.
That one's interesting because, you know, it was assumed, we found them in the fossil record long before we found them living because they live in the deep ocean waters.
Yes.
And then you had these fishermen who dredged up one alive, right? And they're like, we've never seen this fish before. Well, we better, you know, catalog it because this could be good for science. Scientists start looking at this fish and they said, wait a second. This is exactly like what we saw in the fossil record that we have in our books as going extinct over 60 million years ago.
That's right. And you know the other fascinating thing? The coelacanth fish, they misinterpreted this thing. They said it was growing legs, becoming amphibian, based on the fossil evidence. Well, when we found them alive, guess what? They had no legs. They still looked like fish. Misinterpretation of the fossil record.
Okay.
Then we have elephant sharks. According to all the timing of these millions of years, according to evolutionists, not based on real time.
Yeah.
But they haven't changed in 420 million years. Crocodiles have not changed in over 90 million years.
Whoa.
Horseshoe crabs, no change in 450 million years. The nautilus, no change in 500 million years. This tortar lizard.
Yeah.
Now, I like those. These are the ones they use in dinosaur movies. Put a little dressing on them, they look like dinosaurs.
Okay,
But
okay.
no change in those in 200 million years. Scorpions, no change in many millions of years.
360
Jellyfish, no change in 500 million. Here's a scary one. Huntsman spider, they can get pretty big. No change in 50 million years.
I'm not a fan of those.
Dragonflies, no change in 230 million years.
Okay.
Here's a plant, walloping pine, no change in 150 million years. Bats, no change in 52 million years. Starfish, no change in 150 million years. Where's the evolution there?
All of these creatures, and they show virtually identical features in the fossil record as they have today.
Yes.
And yet the fossil record is supposed to be a record of evolution over millions and millions of years. If there's no change, where's the evolution, you're saying?
Well, here's the answer.
Okay.
Because I grew up an evolutionist, and I know a lot of these answers. Certain creatures are well adapted to their environment and don't need to change. That's called a rescue mechanism.
Yeah, so they have another big word called stasis for that. But basically, we have a word for that. It's a rescuing mechanism. It's this magic thing that they can imply anytime the evidence doesn't fit their narrative.
That's right.
Okay.
So, but basically, no evolution there at all. We can do this with many other creatures.
Let's look at fossil graveyards because I think that we can learn a lot from the fact that we find these areas so rich with all of these fossils jumbled in together, almost like there was some catastrophe that took place.
Yes, fossil graveyards. The interesting thing about that is, again, we find these all over the world, fossil graveyards. For instance, Nebraska.
Okay.
We found a fossil graveyard over 9,000 creatures.
Wow.
Look at the type of creatures they found buried together.
Okay.
Rhinoceros, horse, camels, giant wild boars, birds, plants, sea creatures. They don't all live in the same zones, ecological zones. But they're all mangled together, and guess what? Sediments laid down by water.
Wow.
It had to be a flood that caused this.
Okay, all right, so I think a lot of the excuses today for the dinosaurs, at least, is boom, meteor strike, and that's what killed off all of the dinosaurs. But you're saying that the dinosaurs and all of these other creatures are buried in water-lane sediments.
That's right. There's another fossil graveyard in Wyoming, in the Como Bluffs.
Okay.
483 dinosaurs are buried there in a 7-mile-long area.
Whoa.
All in sediments laid down by water. This cannot be a small flood.
Yeah.
That had to be a huge flood to bury that many dinosaurs rapidly to preserve them enough to become fossils.
That's true, and many of them, some of these things are preserved in great detail, fully articulated, right? A lot of dinosaurs you'll find sort of scrambled. If we go to Colorado, you'll find these dinosaurs, multiple pieces of dinosaurs that have all been scrambled together. But sometimes you find them very, very complete, as if, boom, a layer of mud was thrust on top of them and they had no way to even move. They're buried in a where their necks are arched back as if they're gasping for their last breath in a flood.
That's right. And we find them all over the world, even the Gobi Desert, Wyoming, Utah, Chile. They found a whale fossil graveyard.
Really?
Of 70 whales, 20 completely intact.
Wow.
They had to be buried rapidly to preserve them.
Okay, what about, say, at the Grand Canyon? Because this find, a friend, Dr. Steve Austin, has done a lot of research on this. Nautiloids. What can we learn from that?
Nautiloids, I always prefer them as the cigar-shaped sea creatures there.
Okay, okay.
We find billions of these, that's billions with a B,
okay,
buried in a 7-foot thick layer in the Grand Canyon. Now, wait a minute. These creatures live in the oceans.
Yeah.
And guess what we did not find with them? Legs. That means they didn't walk up there. How did they get a mile above sea level in the Grand Canyon? And that 7-foot thick area there goes on for miles, hundreds of miles.
Wow.
It's as if they're all laid down there rapidly.
Okay.
Not over millions of years of time.
All right, when it comes to fossils, there have been a number of mistakes, okay? And I think this is important to note, is that those in the scientific community have gotten it wrong a number of times, and they've admitted that they got it wrong.
And there's still some that do need to be admitted.
That's true, that's true.
For instance, like Piltdown Man. That was found in the early 1900s. That lasted in the education system for over 40 years as the fact of evolution.
Okay.
Big mistake. The whole thing was a fraud.
Wow.
Yes. Then we had Nebraska Man. Here I like to show people how easy anthropology is. Guess where we found Nebraska Man?
Nebraska?
Right. See how easy all this is? It's easy. But Nebraska Man didn't last long, and not all scientists bought into it. But it was used as proof of human evolution. The whole thing was false. It wasn't ape's bones. It wasn't a human bones. It was an extinct pig's tooth.
What?
Very big mistake there.
And they built the whole creature around that.
Yes, they did, from a pig's tooth.
Okay.
Then we have Lucy.
Yeah.
And Lucy, I'm going to use a big word here, is a type of Australopithecine.
Okay.
Australo means southern Pithecine ape. Southern ape-like creatures, we find them in southern parts of Africa. That's where they get their name.
Okay.
Lucy has been so debunked now, but yet they will not let go of it. Everything we see about Lucy is it's an extinct ape.
About a 3.5-foot tall, 65, 75-pound chimpanzee-like creature. And yet this is one of the best current evidences taught still to students today, to young minds that can be impacted in these things, is taught as fact that we evolved from ape-like creatures over millions of years.
Yes, and everything we've seen about it is, even in the textbooks, the drawings do not represent what they really found in the fossil record.
Okay.
Then we had the Archaeoraptor, the feathered dinosaur. Well, that one got debunked rather rapidly because somebody had painted on feather imprints. That was a fraud right away. Then we had the coelacanth, which we talked about. That was wrong. We have whale evolution. Every one of those has been debunked. As a matter of fact, the picture they put in the textbooks, that's what it is. It's a picture drawn by artists.
Wow.
It's not what they really found.
All right, we went out and we asked people on the street, how did all of the rock layers form? What was their opinion on this? And we got some interesting responses. Let's take a look at that right now.
Look, when the weather condition changes severely, those layers will start to form.
No, I can't articulate it.
Well, it's either flooding or sand or wind or stuff blowing around. I would say different things that happen in nature. So sunlight, water, which ultimately is erosion, I guess.
When things come on top and create and push the rocks down and becomes layered like that. So I think a lot of it has to do with just the movement of nature.
Again, I said God could have created them.
Then you continue with like erosion and the particles will settle and build another layer, and then those will harden, and then you'll hit another layer built upon it.
Probably from the change of the landscape on top, the ever-changing surface.
Erosion over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, water and light over time, it erodes the rock, and you can see the different things that have happened to the rock over the many years because of the different environments it's been in.
Erosion, but also deposition. Lots of erosion, lots of deposition equals a lot of sediment. Sediment caused by the worldwide flood.
That's exactly right.
What's our takeaway in 30 seconds?
Takeaway in 30 seconds. What does the observable evidence really show about the fossil record? Fish produce fish. Horses produce horses. Bacteria produce bacteria. And whales produce whales.
Okay.
That sounds like the Bible, based on observable and repeatable evidence.
You can trust the Bible every time.
Right, in
From
all
beginning to
matters
end.
of authority,
Yeah.
history, and science.